The text came through just as I was rinsing out my coffee mug. No name. Just a Houston area code and a single image. At first glance, it looked like a blurry snapshot of my own garage. The shadow of the shelves, the side of the toolbox I'd built myself, the fluorescent light flickering above. Then my eyes landed on her. Laura. Her back against the wall. Her arms looped around someone else. I blinked. Steam still curled from the sink. The mug slipped from my hand and clattered against the porcelain, the echo sharp in the quiet kitchen. I didn't pick it up. I just stared at the photo, my thumb hovering over the screen. The man's face wasn't fully visible, but I knew the frame. Broad-shouldered. Dark hair. The hoodie he wore often had paint flecks. Miles. Our neighbor. The guy who helped me hang the overhead rack. The one Laura invited over when she couldn't figure out how to use the stud finder. The garage door had been left open. I swallowed. My throat was dry, bitter from the remnants of instant coffee. Somewhere above me, I heard the soft creak of footsteps, our daughter waking up, padding toward the bathroom in her socks. I stood frozen in place, the hum of the refrigerator loud against the quiet drumbeat of my pulse. I deleted the photo. Not because I didn't want it. I already knew. I didn't need proof, I needed time. Time to think, to breathe, to remember what control felt like. I placed the mug gently on the counter and walked to the dining room window. The morning light was pale and soft, filtering through the oak in our front yard. Our street was still. Miles's truck sat in his driveway, half-shadowed. The same driveway where he'd helped me unload bags of mulch last spring. Where he stood and laughed, saying Laura had an eye for clean lines. I tried to keep my breathing steady. My hands trembled. She'd kissed me goodbye that morning. Lightly. Like always. I'd barely looked up from my laptop. She'd said something about running to Lowe's, more paint samples, maybe some shelving for the laundry nook. I nodded, told her to be safe. And now here I was. Standing in the wreckage of that moment. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't storm into the garage or call her in tears. That's not who I am. It never has been. Instead, I went upstairs. I helped our daughter brush her teeth. We picked out her sneakers together. I poured her cereal and packed her backpack and walked her to the car like any other Tuesday. My voice stayed level. My smile even. She didn't notice anything was off. But the world had already changed. After I dropped her off at school, I parked at the far end of the grocery lot and sat with the engine off. The garage door played in my mind on loop. The frame. The angle. The closeness of their bodies. The familiarity in how Laura leaned into him, not recoiling, not hesitating. That was my space. My tools. My shelves. I used to think that if this ever happened, I'd feel rage. But what I felt was a kind of weight. Cold, exact, like a lead ball placed carefully at the center of my chest. I pulled out my phone again. The message was gone, but the number was still there. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed a single sentence, garage. Tuesday. 8:43 a.m. Then I locked the screen, put the car in drive, and went home. Before the silence, there was stillness. Our home used to buzz. Laura played music while she painted the hallway, her brushstrokes syncing with old country ballads. We tackled projects together, patching drywall, installing dimmers, staining the deck out back. She called me Mr. Fix-It. I called her Command Central. It was a running joke, but there was truth in it. She knew where everything went, how things should look, and who to call when we hit a wall. That's how Miles first slipped in, under the guise of a helpful neighbor with a designer's eye and free afternoons. He's good with layouts, Laura said when we reorganized the garage. He did those built-ins for the Carsons. At first, I didn't question it. Miles was friendly, knew his tools, and always seemed to be between gigs. He offered advice on optimizing shelf space, showed Laura how to catalog holiday boxes, even helped mount our tool pegboard. Sometimes I'd come home to find them in the driveway, heads bent over a sketchpad. She'd wave me over, look what he mocked up for the back wall. And I'd nod, exhausted from work, thinking how lucky we were to have neighbors who cared. I didn't see it then. We hosted cookouts. Shared folding chairs and paper plates on Saturdays. Our daughter and their kids rode scooters in loops around the cul-de-sac. Laura would disappear inside to grab ice or check the timer. Miles often followed 5 minutes later, carrying beer or empty trays. Looking back, I can't say exactly when my trust began to erode, only that it didn't happen all at once. It happened in moments. Quiet, sharp, easily dismissed. One night, I walked into the kitchen for water and saw Laura flinch as she closed her messages. Not dramatically, just a flick of the wrist, a shift in posture, but enough. When I asked, she smiled. Beth sent a photo of her new puppy, she said, slipping her phone into the drawer. Beth doesn't have a dog. Another time, she came home with paint swatches she said she grabbed on a whim. I found the receipt in her coat pocket later, dated 2 days earlier, time-stamped during school drop-off. Not a big deal, I told myself. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she just reused the bag. But I kept noticing. Kept storing things in the quiet corners of my mind. Then came the Tuesday I worked from home. Laura said she had errands. Target, a thrift store in Montrose, maybe lunch with a friend. I kissed her goodbye. 10 minutes later, I stepped into the garage to find the scent of her perfume lingering, faint, sweet, but recent. There were 2 travel mugs on the workbench. One was hers. The other, a style I didn't recognize. I checked the outside camera feed. It had been off since Sunday. Glitchy app, she'd said. That night, while she showered, I logged into our wireless router's admin panel. I looked at connected devices. An unfamiliar phone had connected that morning at 8:44 a.m., labeled Miles' iPhone. I copied the MAC address and logged out. I still wasn't ready to say it out loud. But something hardened in me. I started pulling threads. I accessed our joint bank account and exported 6 months of statements. I found small, frequent transfers to a Venmo account under a name I didn't know, labeled things like storage bin or hooks. When I tapped further, the account's full name revealed itself, Miles J. Ward. I printed it all. Made a folder. Named it Garage Paint Plans. It slid easily between the others on my shelf. A week later, I ran into Trina, our mutual friend from down the block, at the hardware store. She asked how Laura's design project with Miles was going. I kept my voice neutral. What project? Trina looked caught. Oh, I just meant all the time they've been spending on that garage layout. She mentioned she was working with him almost daily. She hadn't mentioned that to me. Back at home, I waited until Laura was out back watering plants. Then I opened her laptop. I didn't guess her password, I knew it. It hadn't changed since we started dating, brushstrokes 09. Inside was a folder labeled Sketches, mostly templates for storage and design boards. But one subfolder was called Light Study. It contained only 3 files, high-resolution photos, all in the garage. One was just tools. Another, an empty workbench. The third, Laura smiling, bathed in early morning light, a hand, his hand, resting lightly on her shoulder. It was artful. Framed. Intentional. I copied them, then closed the lid. That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling fan and thought of the screws I'd replaced last summer. She'd been in the garage then too, helping Miles sort out cables. I remember her smiling as she came back in, flushed and breathless, laughing at a joke I never heard. It had been happening beneath my nose. In my home. In my space. But not anymore. Now I was awake. I didn't confront her. Not in the kitchen. Not in the bedroom. Not with a raised voice or a shattered plate. That's not how you win. You don't strike in reaction. You prepare. I began with the obvious, documentation. I scanned every receipt, every bank charge, every image. I printed screenshots of text logs and cloud-linked device access reports. I built folders, not just digital, but physical ones too, labeled with mundane names, summer projects, garage lighting, Laura's painting class. I scheduled a consultation with a family attorney, a man named Dalton Fields, mid-40s, matter-of-fact, with the kind of eyes that had seen 100 collapsed marriages. His office sat in a red brick building downtown, tucked behind a law library. The walls were lined with neutral artwork, muted blues and grays. When I sat down, he didn't ask why I was there. Just waited. I laid a slim stack of papers on his desk. "My wife's having an affair with our neighbor," I said. "It's been going on for at least 3 months. Maybe longer. I want custody of our daughter. And I want to do this quietly." He flipped through the stack slowly, nodding. "You've got a strong head start. Documentation is clean. Dates line up. Messaging apps, location data. No confrontation yet." "No. She doesn't know I know." Dalton closed the folder. "Good. That's leverage." He explained the next steps: retain his services, gather full financial disclosures, begin drafting a parenting agreement. "Your best asset is your consistency," he said. "Judges care about stability. Routine. You've got a full-time job, no criminal history, and she's about to blow a hole through your shared home life with a neighbor." I nodded. "What do you need from me now?" "A detailed log. Everything. Missed pickups, suspicious absences, time spent away from the child. Stick to facts. No emotion. If this goes to court, you want to look like the calm one holding the blueprint." I left the office with a retainer agreement and a fresh sense of direction. Next, I installed 2 discrete cameras. One in the garage, angled high, focused on the entry and workbench. The other in the side yard, where Miles often walked over under the excuse of helping with storage planning. I set the system to alert me only during weekday hours and stored the footage offsite via cloud backup. I wasn't spying. I was recording trespass. I called my older brother, Ray. Retired Army logistics. No nonsense. He didn't ask why I wanted to meet, he just said, "Name the diner." We sat at a booth off I-45, sipping burnt coffee and splitting a plate of overcooked eggs. "She's been in the garage with him," I said. He didn't flinch. Just picked up his fork again. "How long?" "Months. I've got the receipts. And photos. Lawyers on board." He leaned back. "You going to confront her?" "Eventually. But not until everything's in place." Ray nodded, then gave me the look he used to give during chess matches, right before knocking over my king. "You're doing the right thing. Slow is smart. Fast gets messy." We talked through the options. I asked about when Dad had left Mom, what worked, what didn't. Ray said the worst part wasn't the leaving, it was the spiral after. "Don't spiral," he said. "Control the tempo. Keep your voice low. She expects you to explode." I didn't. I started journaling daily. Just entries to track logistics, Laura's outings, times she left without explanation, sudden interest in errands she never cared about before. I logged bedtime routines with our daughter, school drop-offs, weekend schedules. I documented everything. Emotionally, I remained distant. Not cruel, just steady. If she kissed my cheek, I let her. If she asked how work was, I answered. But I stopped offering details. I stopped filling the space she used to walk through so freely. A week later, I had lunch with Kevin, a college friend who worked in IT security for an oil firm. "Need a favor," I told him. "I want to make sure I'm not missing anything obvious. Can you look over my backup procedures, phone sync, cloud storage?" Kevin didn't ask why. We'd been friends long enough for him to hear everything in my tone. He nodded. "Forward me what you've got. I'll sanitize and encrypt it. You're backing this up on a local drive too, right?" I was now. By the end of the week, I had 3 copies of every file, 2 physical, 1 encrypted digital, and a growing plan for post-confrontation custody. Dalton sent me the first draft of a parenting proposal. It was fair but firm: primary custody to me, every other weekend to her, shared holidays, split birthdays. I included detailed notes about our daughter's schedule, her favorite bedtime songs, her peanut allergy, the way she liked her apple slices peeled. Dalton said, "This level of care stands out in court. I also started therapy. Not grief therapy. Not yet. I needed a place to sharpen my thinking. The therapist's name was Michelle. She had a soft voice and an incisive way of framing questions. What would justice look like for you? She asked during our second session. Stability, I said. For my daughter. For myself. Not punishment. No. I want clarity. And distance. We talked about boundaries. About identity. About how betrayal doesn't erase worth, it just reveals where it was misplaced. Meanwhile, Laura kept drifting. She smiled more at her phone. Left early on Saturdays. Sometimes came home flustered, claiming traffic delays even though I tracked her location history and knew where she'd been, usually 2 doors over. One night, she came home with takeout and a bottle of wine. Felt like treating us, she said, kissing my cheek. Miles helped me move the holiday boxes. I owed him a beer. I nodded, setting the table. Thoughtful of you. She didn't notice the camera in the corner. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. Her hand lingered on Miles's chest just a second too long as he stepped out of our garage. No kiss. No touch. But the intimacy was there, in the lean of her body, the quiet way she watched him leave. I saved the clip. Filed it with the others. That night, I printed our wedding photo. The one we took in Galveston, standing barefoot in the sand, wind lifting her veil. I placed it in a clean oak frame and set it on the kitchen counter. Not as a reminder of what we were, but as a marker for where it would all end. She noticed the photo first. It sat on the kitchen table in the center, our wedding picture, newly framed, carefully positioned between 2 mugs of coffee. The same photo we'd once hung by the stairs but removed when the paint chipped. We never rehung it. Laura paused in the doorway. She'd come in from the garage, the air behind her still tinged with sawdust and citrus perfume. She froze when she saw the photo, then looked at me. You pulled that out? She asked cautiously. I did. I gestured to the chair across from mine. Sit down. She hesitated, then slid into the seat. She reached for the coffee, then stopped. What's going on? I didn't answer immediately. I opened a folder, the same nondescript manila one labeled garage paint plans, and laid out the contents in sequence: screenshots, receipts, bank logs, cloud-stamped photos. And finally, a printed still from the garage camera. It showed her and Miles, barely touching but unmistakably close. Familiar. She didn't speak. Just stared. I've known for a while, I said. I waited because I didn't want a fight. I wanted a plan. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She glanced at the coffee, as if deciding whether she deserved the comfort of it. I wasn't, she began. You were, I said evenly. You are. The room hummed with the refrigerator's low buzz. Outside, a lawnmower whined 3 houses down. The world was moving forward, but inside our kitchen, time folded. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. I believe you. My voice stayed level. But it did. In our home. In our garage. She looked at the documents again. You've been collecting this? I nodded. Silently. Carefully. Because we have a daughter. Because I wanted to protect her from a storm you chose to start. Her shoulders dropped. Not in relief, more like a weight settling into place. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You jeopardized the foundation of this house. Of her life. Laura swallowed, her hands folding tightly in her lap. So, what now? I slid a second folder across the table. Custody agreement. Drafted with a lawyer. I'm not asking for alimony. I want stability for our daughter, weekdays with me, alternate weekends with you. You can stay in the guest room for the next 3 weeks, until you find your own place. But your time in this house is done. She blinked. You're ending it like this. I'm ending it with clarity, I said. Not with yelling. Not with cruelty. With boundaries. She opened the folder and scanned the first page. Her hand trembled slightly. Then her eyes drifted back to the wedding photo. We were happy, she said softly. We were honest, I corrected. Until you weren't. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was clean. Final. I'll sign it, she said, barely above a whisper. I know. I stood, taking my mug with me. I paused at the edge of the room, watching her still seated across from the evidence, our wedding photo tilted just slightly toward her. I'll be upstairs, I said. Please leave the photo where it is. She didn't answer. Just sat there, quiet, folded inward, no longer the woman who laughed in the garage or leaned into Miles's shoulder. She was someone else now. And I no longer needed to understand her. The house didn't feel emptier once she was gone. It felt honest. The echoes that followed her absence weren't hollow. They were clean. Her clothes disappeared from the closet. Her favorite mug from the shelf. The chair she always dragged to the sunny corner of the living room sat undisturbed for weeks. I left it there, not out of nostalgia, but because I'd earned the right to be still in my own home. The custody agreement was signed without contest. 2 weeks after our conversation at the kitchen table, her lawyer emailed back with no red lines, no revisions. She moved into a short-term rental near her sister. Miles wasn't mentioned. Not once. I didn't ask. I didn't care. What mattered was our daughter. She adjusted quickly. Children are built to bend, not break. I kept her mornings the same cereal, same cartoons, same backpack laid out the night before. We drew on Saturdays, visited the dog park on Sundays. I didn't speak ill of Laura. I just showed up. Fully. My lawyer said the court would love the paper trail I built. You were surgical, Dalton said. Most people implode. You didn't even flinch. I had flinched. Just not in front of anyone. The wedding photo stayed on the table for 3 weeks. Then, one afternoon, I took it down and replaced it with a new one, my daughter and me, kneeling beside a tree we planted in the backyard. She named it Strongy. The garage became mine again. I cleared every corner, purged every shelf. I found the exact spot where Laura and Miles had stood in that photo. The light still came through at the same angle. But now it landed on a workbench I built myself, planed and sanded by hand. A new project sat in the center, a pine birdhouse, half assembled, waiting for my daughter to add paint. One evening, while brushing her teeth, she pointed to a framed photo on the hallway wall, one of the 3 of us. Are you sad she's not here anymore? I paused. I'm sad she hurt us. But I'm not sad we're safe now. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Children are sharper than we give them credit for. I started writing again, not journals, but entries. Thoughts, reflections, lessons I wished I'd known sooner. I called the blog, Blueprint After Betrayal. The name came to me while measuring cuts for the birdhouse. I posted once a week, short pieces on staying calm, on documenting, on protecting what matters without becoming bitter. At first, no one read them. Then one day, a comment appeared beneath a post titled, "The garage was never just a garage." Thank you. I thought I was losing my mind. Reading this helped me breathe again. There was no name. Just initials. I replied, and more comments followed. I didn't become a guide. I became a mirror. I showed others what quiet survival looked like. What reclaiming your space, your time, your voice, could feel like. In the end, Laura's affair didn't destroy me. It clarified me. I kept the wedding photo, but not on display. I stored it in a drawer, behind the legal documents and next to the first hand-painted birdhouse we finished together. A reminder of what broke, and what we built after. The difference, I learned, was choice. She made hers. And finally, so did I.